We'd like to call to order the Board of Directors meeting of the Monroe County Solid Waste Management District. This is November 10th, 2022, and we have a full agenda. Let's begin with the attendance roll call, please.
Munson,
Here.
Thomas, Githens,
Here.
Hamilton, Piedmont Smith,
Here.
Jones, Swafford.
Here.
You have a quorum, and I would note for the record, Commissioner Thomas did already advise that she does plan to attend, but be running late. Unless I misunderstood Commissioner Jones, I do expect her to come in virtually at some point soon.
Good. Thank you. Well, we have minutes first to address, and we have executive committee meeting minutes for October 3rd, which are in your packets, and these are for your information. We have board meeting minutes for approval. Ms. Piedmont Smith?
Yes, I move approval of the Board of Directors meeting minutes from October 13th, 2022. Second.
Thank you. Board members, do you have any questions or comments on these minutes?
Not me.
We'll have a roll call vote then, please.
Githens,
Yes.
Swafford,
Yes.
Munson,
Yes.
Piedmont Smith.
Yes.
Motion passes.
Moving on to the controller's report. Welcome, Ms. Dewar. And we'd like to hear first about cash flows.
Okay. For cash flows, on page 11 of the packet is the cash flow summary statement, followed by the fund specific cash flow statements with month-end balances as of October 31st as follows. The operating is $2,377,896.74. Money market savings, $1,004,428.01. Closure bond debt, $31,337.30. Capital, $45,466.51. Landfill post-closure, $724,609.78. Are there any questions concerning the cash flow statements?
Ms. Piedmont Smith?
Yes, I was just wondering on the closure bond debt, how much do we have left to pay on that?
I'm sorry.
How much do we have left to pay on that? When does it expire?
That is an answer that I would have to.
Yeah, I'm sorry, don't have that information readily available in front of me, but we certainly can get that at the office Monday, since tomorrow is a holiday, and provide that information to the board.
Okay, that might be, I don't know how others feel, but that might be a good thing just to have every month, like have a little asterisk and have what the remaining debt is.
We can certainly add that.
Thank you.
Yeah, we can. I would just, caution that we only make 2 payments a year. So that amount's only going to change twice a year.
Yeah.
So.
But a good reminder. Thank you.
Thank you.
Any other questions?
Oh, actually,
Go ahead.
yes, I had questions. So on page 12 with the detailed revenue lines, what is toters? It wasn't budgeted, and there's like $1,200 in income. What is that?
What was the line again?
It's called toters.
Oh, toters. That is, those are the that is the recycling receptacles we provide to the GBN clients.
Mhm.
And there are times where, depending on the quantity that they need or request, or if things get damaged and need to be replaced, that the client, there is sometimes an expectation for the client to reimburse the district for those costs.
I can't even find it on here, but
And then the waste tires, I see that's kind of going pretty slowly and I apologize, I haven't read the department reports, so I don't know if there's a report on that, but how is that going? As far as,
Well, I mean,
is the word getting out?
we're receiving tires, and that is for sure, and somewhat regularly, but I would say not to the volume anticipated. So I think that that revenue line for the year is going to come up well short. Conversely, the expense line will be well below the appropriation that was made for those tires to be disposed or recycled of. Yeah.
Is there more publicity that we could do for the program?
Sorry.
Is there more publicity that could be done for that program?
Potentially, certainly something we could look at. Yeah.
Thank you.
Any other questions for cash flows?
no. Let's go to
Okay.
payroll and claims then.
We'll move on to payroll and claims. Beginning on page 19 of the packet are pre-approved payroll and claims in the amount of $160,000, $767.84. No claims were processed this week to submit to the board at today's meeting. The total amount of payroll claims needing approval, are $160,000, 767. Sorry, I am a little off my game today. $167,000, $767.84.
Yep.
With that confusing information, are there any questions on this?
I have no questions because we looked at these already.
I'm sorry.
I said, I have no questions because we did look at these already. So this is Piedmont Smith.
I just had a question on, so page 21, claim number 4, Bynum Fanyo. Were these like routine maintenance or what? I couldn't really make sense of what this was for.
No, that I guess due to elevations behind the recycling center at South Walnut, we do have a lift station for the wastewater that comes out of the admin building and the recycling center. And we had a control panel failure on that lift station. So that's not a routine maintenance. That was something unanticipated, but obviously something that had to be taken care of.
So it's broken down into several lines, but these were all at South Walnut.
Yeah, that's I think on the claims docket, it was itemized the same way it was itemized on the invoice from Bynum Fanyo, but that was all related to the same repair project.
Another request as far as formatting. So every line for this claim had exactly the same text, which
Has the same what?
the same text, like
The same description.
same description 5 times. So I'm wondering if that either we could just have the description once and say there are, 5 parts of it, or
I see, yeah.
can we have a more precise description? for each item?
Yes, there would be a more precise description. I mean, each one of the items listed in that description is going to relate to one of those charges that probably should have been more clearly differentiated in the descriptions of each line.
Is it possible to differentiate them? I mean,
Yeah.
I don't know what the software is like.
Yeah, yes, that, yeah,
Okay.
that we can input things differently when we process the claims in the system and get it to print that way. Yeah.
Mhm.
I'd appreciate that. Thank you.
Other questions? Okay. I think you might see something comparable to the Bynum-Faneuil descriptions when you look at the Duke Energy descriptions.
Yeah, and it's where, yeah, and it's, if you'll note on the account column, all of those charges start 06. So each one of those is going to be electric bill for one of the rural sites.
Mhm.
And again, they got lumped into the all in, one description to cover everything and instead of identifying which charge is to which specific site.
Mhm.
And again, that can be put into the system differently to make
Right.
that distinction on the docket.
Yeah, you might want to differentiate because if you have some weird problem with the electricity, you'd like to know that that could be signaled by a very high bill 1 month for that place. Okay. Other questions or comments on the claims? Ms. Piedmont Smith?
Yes, didn't we used to have a report that showed how much we paid Republic Services?
We do, and we usually include that with a claims docket that includes a payment to Republic Services.
Okay, so we didn't have
And
any.
I do know there is one in the office. So the next time that we run claims, we will be paying Republic Services and that
Okay.
chart will show up.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. So if there are no further questions, we should entertain a motion for approval of claims.
Madam Chair, I move approval of payroll and claims as presented in the meeting packet.
Second.
Thank you. Any further discussion? Seeing none, we'll have a roll call vote, please.
Piedmont Smith,
Yes,
Thomas,
Yes.
Jones,
Yes.
Munson,
Yes.
Swafford,
Yes.
Githens.
Yes.
Motion passes.
Thank you. Next on our agenda is discussion of new positions in the district budget for 2023. So these are proposed positions.
Again, these are the job descriptions for the two positions that were originally discussed during the budgeting process over the summer. They were presented to the board for the first time last month for comments, suggestions, review, and are now being presented back to the board with a request for legal counsel advise that, a simple motion and a vote by the board would approve the job descriptions. And then once those are approved, the next agenda item would be the salary ordinance that does include those positions. So we will need to have a decision on the two job descriptions, and if the board elects to approve the job descriptions and agree to create those positions, the salary ordinance may be adopted as presented. If the board does not wish to approve or create one or both of those positions, then the salary ordinance would need to be amended before being voted on.
Okay, thank you. Thank you. Well, let's begin with the waste reduction specialist and see if there are any questions regarding the job description. And you can see there's a red line version in the packet.
If I could comment, I had a really good discussion with Mr. McGlasson this week about these positions, and I'm more comfortable with it now than I was last time, so.
Thank you for reporting that, and thank you for examining this carefully. Other board members, do you have any questions or comments on the waste reduction specialist position? Ms. Thomas?
The other thing I want to add is that one of the things we talked about was tracking progress and making sure that we are clear on what's been achieved and the work that's been able to be done, number of contacts made, things like that, so that we can determine the value of the position in the long term. But I think it's worth giving it a try. And that's where I'm at on that. Thanks.
Okay. So perhaps under responsibilities somewhere, I think we could include, we have prepare and provide reports to the executive director, board of directors and other local and state agencies as deemed necessary and appropriate. So we can ask for reports.
I would note that on page 42 of the packet, I guess I'm looking at the red line version, but
Yeah,
under responsibilities, number 3, other responsibilities, when requested, attend board of directors meetings and provide reports on waste reduction activities.
Yeah. so that sounds good. Okay, well, if it is your pleasure, we will have a motion to approve this job description.
Madam Chair, I move that we approve the waste reduction specialist job description.
Second.
Thank you. Any further discussion or comments? Mr. McGlasson, we will have a roll call vote, please.
Swafford,
Yes.
Thomas,
Yes.
I'm sorry,
Yes.
Githens,
Yes.
Piedmont Smith,
Yes.
Jones,
Yes.
Munson.
Yes,
Motion passes.
thank you. Now, let me here, please. Now we have a second position that is a staff support position for compliance, household hazardous waste, and landfill support. And that is on page 19 of our package. Is that correct?
44.
44.
Page 44, and
I
that,
am- Oh, excuse me, I'm reading this wrong. 44.
and after presenting at last month's meeting, there was no requests or suggestions for revisions to
We
this
just
job
changed the,
description.
we just changed the name.
We changed the name to support staff and did remove references to labor or replace those with support staff throughout the document.
Can I make a motion to approve the job description for compliance, household hazardous waste, landfill support staff?
Second.
Thank you. I'm sorry to be slow on this, but I don't have that page. In my back, it's okay. I did look at it online and I have, my computer is non-functioning at this point, so. Yeah, no, I'm okay, because I've got printed copies here. And I had seen it before the meeting.
I'm
I just
sorry
don't
that
have it in
I
front
did
of
not
me,
get that in the binder for you. I
That's
thought that I
okay.
printed the whole thing off.
but we only changed the title of the position. So,
I believe the title was the same at the last meeting, but we had just forgotten some references
Yes,
to
the
that.
references to the
Yes.
text of the document did
right.
not get updated.
Inside. Okay. So we are ready for a roll call vote on this position. Oh, we have,
Oh, public
we do have public comment. Because we do have a member of the public here. Two of them.
But we have two CAC members in the room and one
do.
CAC member online.
Oh, I didn't see the CAC member online. Okay, is there any public comment?
I see
See none, we will have a roll call vote, please.
Jones,
Yes.
Piedmont Smith,
Yes.
Githens,
Yes.
Munson,
Yes,
Thomas,
Yes.
Swafford.
Yes.
Motion passes.
okay, thank you. Next we'll have a motion for resolution 2022-13. Please.
I move approval of resolution 2022-13, Monroe County Solid Waste Management District ordinance for fixing salaries for calendar year 2023.
Second.
I'm sorry, who's second? I missed. Got to keep my notes straight so the minutes are right. So an annual resolution that we have to do every year to establish maximum fixed salaries for all the positions for the coming year. As indicated in the memo, this resolution, the salary ordinance, is based on the 2023 budget, which included the 8.5% wage increase according to the CPI for urban wage earners and clerical workers that the district has historically used to establish that annual cost of living increase.
Thank you. So, board members, do you have any questions about this resolution? It all goes back to our budget deliberations. Okay. Is there any public comment about this resolution? Online, please raise your hand. Seeing none, Mr. McGlasson will have a roll call vote, please. And I'll ask the board members to be sure and stay afterwards to sign the resolution because it's essential for getting people paid.
Thomas,
Yes.
Jones,
Yes.
Piedmont Smith,
Yes.
Swafford,
Yes.
Githens,
Yes.
Munson.
Yes,
Motion passes.
we have another resolution. Ms. Piedmont Smith,
Yes, I move approval of resolution 2022-14, Monroe County Solid Waste Management District, establishing the 2023 district holiday schedule.
Second.
thank you. So you would think this would be pretty easy, but it's not. And every year your executive committee goes back and forth, like, should we change this or should we change that? And this is because there are 3 different workplaces within the district. There is the administration, there's South Walnut and household hazardous waste recycling. And then as a group, there are the 4 rural recycling centers. And getting things as balanced as possible is a mathematical challenge. And we almost approach it every year. Almost. I don't think it's not possible to actually make it totally balanced, but we do our very best.
Once in a blue moon, maybe. So, and in addition to what Ms. Munson had indicated, at the South Walnut, at the recycling and household hazardous waste, in addition to them having a different schedule, you have 2 different scheduling rotations at that facility.
That's right.
So oftentimes, holidays that fall on a Tuesday only hit one rotation of employees and not the other. So even at that facility, you don't always have an equitable distribution of the employees. So on page 51 of the packet, a table I started putting together a couple of years ago that's kind of shows how we break all of that down and relate, all the holidays and paid holiday time back to the administration schedule and try to be as equitable as we can in ensuring that employees receive, roughly the same amount of paid holiday time on an annual basis relative to their schedule versus to administration. So you can see, and for this year, the administration office is being proposed to be granted 13 holidays. And due to the South Walnut facility being closed on Monday, only 7 of those holidays impact or hit on the schedules of that facility. And then you can see that breaks down on 5 and 6 for the 2 scheduling rotations. So the proposal is to provide a total of 11 paid holidays, adding floating holidays to those South Walnut employees. You'll see that would give them a total for the year of 110 paid holiday hours relative to admin's 104. And then at the rural sites, a total of 9 of those holidays hit the schedules for the rural sites. And that breaks down to 6 for the Monday and Wednesday site operators and 3 for the Friday, Saturday operators. So proposing to give 3 floating holidays to the Friday, Saturday operators to equal them out with the Monday and Wednesday operators. You'll note that only gives them 69 paid holiday hours a year. However, those employees are only scheduled for 23 hours a week. So they're actually, relative to per hours worked, they're doing a little bit better than everybody else, but that's just fine.
So you might imagine the creativity needed to get this close to balancing, and that's accomplished by having floating holidays for these, to make these diverse schedules come out close to each other. So any questions or comments from the board? Okay, is there any public comment? We'll have a roll call vote, please.
Githens,
Yes.
Swafford,
Yes.
Munson,
Yes.
Jones,
Yes.
Thomas,
Yes.
Piedmont Smith.
Yes.
Motion passes.
Thank you. Next on our agenda is a discussion of rebranding for the district. And I'm not sure who is going to lead this discussion. Is it Mr. Winia or Mr. McGlasson?
I will just reference the memo on page 55 in the packet was authored by Mr. Winia. He has kind of spearheaded that rebranding committee. So I would, if he's willing, offer him an opportunity to expand on the information in the memorandum.
That's great. Thank you.
Certainly. Thank you, Mr. McGlasson, and good afternoon, members of the board. I actually don't have an awful lot more to add than what was provided in the memorandum. It's really, I think, a really representative summary of what the subcommittee was, the conclusions that were reached by the subcommittee in terms of the direction that we were inclined to take and the content that we were interested in pursuing. The one thing that I don't believe is included in the packet are the images, I guess the draft logos that were created. Either Mr. McGlasson, if you have them, you could potentially show them. Or...
I forgot to do that. The oversight, sorry.
Okay. Alternatively, I could also join the Zoom meeting and share them if that were a possibility as well during the discussion, if there's interest.
Please.
All right. Is the link provided at the top of the agenda accurate to today's meeting?
It should be. It
Okay,
doesn't change.
let me make sure.
But are they in Dropbox?
Well, at the very least, I think the discussion can begin around the content that is provided in the memo. Well, at the meantime, I will make an effort to connect to the meeting so I can provide the illustrations that accompany the content in the memo. There are elements such as the slogan and the potential name change that I think could also begin being discussed in advance of consideration of the logo content.
Mr. McGlasson, could you address briefly the possibility of a name change and how that's legally possible?
Yes, it is. Changing the district's name is certainly a possibility. There are actually a handful of districts throughout the state that have done that. In my discussions with them, it is as simple as the board passing a resolution, changing the name of how the district wants to be referred to. And then from the public's perspective, the board's perspective, that accomplishes that. Now there's obviously some work on the back end for staff, dealing with vendors and banks and IRS and the state treasury, but it is, like I said, a handful of districts have done it, so it's certainly possible to do. And I've talked with them, and they can certainly guide me through the process if this board decides that it wants to change the name of the district. And then, Joe, I think I've got at least one of the logos. Was able to share my screen, and
Okay.
I think
We do see
There it
it
is.
here.
And
Yeah.
you can see it up there.
Yeah, nice.
Excellent. Yeah, they are all available in the CAC's Dropbox folder as well. There is a subfolder called subcommittees and then another folder called rebranding, and they should all three
Okay.
actually be located in that same directory. Indeed, they are. Thank you. So the few of the elements that we had considered in the subcommittee that I'll just make note of are the potential name change as the waste reduction district instead of the solid waste management district, to really emphasize that focus with respect to the mission statement and the direction of the district. We did discuss color variety, a number of colors, keeping it somewhat limited for cost and ease of printing reasons. And also going with green and blue tend to be very popular for these types of activities. So they, I think, are indicative of the activity that the district is responsible for from a sort of branding perspective. And then also that, let's see. Yes, the idea of the Indiana state border to incorporate some element of the locale as something that I also observed in searching for other logos of similar types of organizations around the country. So that was a consistent element and one that I appreciated to help tie it to the space. And then some elements that were discussed that were not included in these proposed logos were the idea of a shrinking trash can or having one central image with satellite images around it to portray some of the various aspects of the district's activities. Though another thing that I observed when referencing other existing logos is that they tend to be very simple and clear. And the notion of having many objects around a central object, I think, would detract from that trend and that quality that I think is valuable to have as well, to have something simple and solid to represent the district.
Yeah, I would agree about trying to keep it simple rather than trying to represent everything we do.
So one of the elements that does appear on these drafts is one of the top chosen slogans, which is our planet, our responsibility. Another one that was highly favored was your actions, global impact. And the idea is to incorporate sort of a personal element as well as a community element, or two different scales, you might say, that everybody does act individually, but that we all have a collective impact together. And I think really the interest of this process is getting the full board's feedback on the subcommittee's decisions to make sure that these are all in alignment with where the board would like the brand of the district to go going forward. It could definitely be left entirely in the hands of the subcommittee, but I would also be interested in knowing, I think we would all be interested in knowing what the board collectively thinks about moving in this direction to assure that before we take the next big step of providing all of this information to the marketing agents, that they will have the information that everybody wants to go in, so that the next step will correspond as well as possible to the collective interest of the direction of the board and the district.
And I would just add to the committee's intent was not necessarily to design the logo, was more to give a consultant an idea of what we were looking at and envisioning, and they may come back with something very similar or identical, or they may say, you guys are way off base and this is what it needs to be. But the intent was for us to come up with some sort of idea of color scheme, direction, the logo, the slogan, what are we envisioning, and let the consultant take that and run with it.
And I would also say, thank you, Mr. McGlasson, for adding that. I think that the content that's provided in this memo would be more or less what's provided to the consultants for giving direction to their input and proposals, which would then be returned to the subcommittee for an exchange in terms of reaching an agreement on what we agree is the look that we want and what the consultants recommend is the look that's advised, or the content.
So I would comment that I especially like in the memorandum, the section titled General Interest to Incorporate into the new brand and the language therein. Inclusion of responsibility, call to action, empowering, incorporating the idea of individual and community, and the effect of individual action. That's very big and meaty set of interests to weave into a logo, but I think those are all important concepts to keep in mind for the specialist that's going to be working on this. I think that's really great that your team did this. Ms. Piedmont Smith?
Yeah, looking at the two slogans that are proposed, I much prefer the first one, Our World, Our Responsibility, because it does have the word responsibility in it. And I find it hard. I mean, I'm an environmentalist, and I find it hard to make the connection of my action of, using less or buying less or not wasting as much, and a global impact. I mean, yes, it's true. If everybody did this, it would have a global impact, but I think it's harder. It's hard for people to draw that line. So that's why I would go with the first one. That's just my opinion.
Again, I come back, this was, the committee just kind of brainstorming and spitballing things that to give a consultant who specializes in this an idea of what we're thinking in the direction that we're looking at, and then let them expand on that and then develop what they think would be the best course for us moving forward to promote ourselves and our brand.
Other comments or questions from the board members?
I have one question, and it's just because it's a change. Why was the word solid omitted in terms of solid waste?
I don't remember that specific discussion, but I can Part of it has to do with length and cumbersome of the name. Some of it, from my perspective, has to do with some of the calls that we get and people relating solid waste to human waste.
Exactly.
And so there is somewhere in there, there's a disconnect with that name, with that term.
It's just that people also waste time, waste money. I mean, we're not going to address all of those as well. So
So waste is both a verb and a noun. So,
I will note, I don't believe we had an extensive discussion about the omission of that particular word. And I know I can also speak on my own behalf, saying that it was just a matter of simplifying, kind of
Yeah.
like Mr. McClassen stated, just to make it really, really accessible, that this is about waste reduction.
Yeah.
And even adding the word solid, I think can cause enough of a difference so that it just becomes a little bit less accessible to an average person who reads it, who is not as invested in waste as everyone here.
And I think one of the things that to keep in mind with regard to that is that, the name came from state regulation.
mhm.
When the state passed a law in 1990 requiring counties to form or become a part of a multi-county solid waste management district. And that name, that term was based on state definitions of refuse. And that's, originally that's where the name came from.
So do we have any further discussion or comments? Then let me open this to public comment. If anybody would like to weigh in by raising their hand. Seeing none. Do we have any action proposed?
No action
Yes.
proposed on this.
Just
Just
discussion.
an opportunity to let the board know where we are, and then if there's any, objection to the direction that we're going, a chance to voice that before we start engaging with a consultant and looking at
Mhm.
entering into an agreement to move this forward.
Okay. Well, would you please tell us about next steps for reaching out to identify consultants?
Well, we've identified a handful of consultants already. I've had some discussions with a few of them, more to get an idea from them of what information they would need from us to put a proposal together and a cost estimate. So the next steps now would be reaching back out to those identified consultants with the information, with what we have, and asking them to put a proposal and a cost estimate together for the board to consider.
Very good. Well, I would like to thank the committee of the CAC for working on this. I think it was a really important step for us. And I look forward to seeing where we go.
Likewise, and thank you to the board as well for their participation.
Thank you. So Mr. Winnie, you can stay right there at the podium if you would, please. And we'll move next to a discussion of CAC membership.
Indeed, if I may introduce that, I know today's packet was a particularly long one, so I hope that you all had the opportunity to find the letter written. It's on page 56 of the packet. I will read a few lines from it and summarize a few lines from it because I think it's good just to have in mind as we go into this part of the discussion. It starts with at its last regular meeting on October 20th, the Citizens Advisory Committee moved to request your consideration regarding the appointment of 2 CAC members. In short, attendance has been a persistent problem for this body for an extended period, and it's resulted in an ongoing struggle and regular failure to achieve quorum at regular meetings. So I would like to direct your attention. There are 2 pages that follow that have the actual attendance records from 2021 and 2022 respectively. And you can see that in 2021, 1/4 of our regular meetings failed to achieve quorum. And in 2022, we are trending at exactly the same rate. So also worth noting, there are particular members who have consistently been more present or less present than others. And so over this last year in particular, there have been several measures taken to address these tendencies. The most important of which is we drafted bylaws that set the expectations for membership. Those are present on starting on page 64 of the packet. but most importantly, the expectations are on page 66 of the packet under member attendance in particular. It states that they're expected to regularly attend regularly attend meetings. An absence from 2 or more consecutive meetings or 50% or more of meetings in a 6-month period is considered excessive. So that is that was the first step. And the second was we adopted a policy to require notification of intent to attend the meeting, in particular when returning to hybrid meetings to deal with the virtual and in-person requirements. So we adopted that as a policy to require notification so we can plan. And the same members who have not been present in general for meetings have also generally not been responding to the planning document. So we've nearly canceled most of our last 3 consecutive meetings on account of lack of response to the attendance planning process. So there are 2 members in particular, as you can see from the attendance records, that have the most absences. So the CAC has, for the first member, Mr. Greenberg, asked of the board to remove Mr. Greenberg from the CAC membership as he has only attended 1 out of 8 meetings and expressed an intent to resign, but still has not yet. So in order to make that process take place and to alleviate the persistent absences, it would be in the CAC's interest to have him removed from membership. And the second is Mr. Nelson Schaefer, who with a different request from the CAC has only attended about half of the meetings, but has not been responding to any of the attendance planning process. So for this case, the CAC has requested of the board to review Mr. Schaefer's membership without an express request for removal, but for consideration given the attendance record and its impact on the committee. So that is the full arc of the process that has led us to this point and the request for your involvement in the process.
Okay, thank you.
Yes.
So we have two proposals directed to the board. One concerns Mr. Greenberg's request for dismissal from the CAC membership. And the second is Mr. Nelson Schaefer, who is with us today. Thank you, Mr. Schaefer. To review his attendance, and also we have an opportunity to discuss with him how the attendance can be brought into conformance with the necessary plans of the organization, because we all have to have quorums in order to be able to work, as we struggle to do here on our board. So thank you all for being here today. Let's take these separately, I believe.
Yes.
And would you like to discuss this and come up with develop a motion, or would you like to have a motion?
I was going to go ahead and make a motion.
Please do.
I move that we remove Mason Greenberg from the CAC due to missed meetings.
Second.
Thank you. Any discussion on this motion? I see none. Since this is a board action, I don't know if this is public comment or not. I'm not sure, but I would entertain public comment because this is a usual step for us, but we're trying to help the CAC be as effective as it can possibly be, because they are an important part of what we do. So please raise your hand, public, in the virtual world, if you have any comment. And I see none. We are ready then for a roll call vote. Mr. McGlasson.
Munson,
Yes.
Thomas,
Yes.
Piedmont Smith,
Yes.
Swafford,
Yes.
Githens,
Yes.
Jones,
Yes.
motion passes.
Okay. For the second report, Mr. Schaefer's absences which are also excessive and posing a problem for the organization. I had the opportunity to talk with Nelson Schaefer over the phone, and I'm so glad he's here today because Mr. Schaefer has been a member of the CAC for 15 or more years. Is that correct? Sometime like that. Okay, for quite a long time. And I believe he's not familiar with and also not attentive to the new reporting requirements as to whether he's going to make a meeting or not. And there's also been some confusion on his part as to meeting locations. So in light of Mr. Schaefer's longstanding participation, I would like us to reconsider this at a future date if the absences continue to be a problem for the CAC. And that would be my proposal to the board, that we take no action today, but consider this in the future.
May I ask how soon we would reconsider?
I would like to ask Mr. Winia what makes sense to the CAC.
Goodness. Difficult to speak on behalf of the CAC. There were differing opinions among members.
Yeah.
I will speak on my own behalf in saying that as chair and as facilitator of the meetings and organizer of the meetings, I have put considerable effort into making sure that there has been clarity and consistency in all of the information that's been communicated for all the members. I have maintained an open line of communication, both in person at meetings and in most of my emails saying, do please reach out if you have any questions. And I did reach out to Mr. Schaefer already in April, explaining the importance of the planning process and why it was necessary and that there hadn't been contribution and that there needed to be. And I feel like the window of opportunity for evaluation has already taken place and that 6 months have passed since then and the results have been consistent. And to the point of meeting location confusion, I'll note that even in 2021, when meetings were all virtual, the attendance was of the same rate as it has been for in-person meetings. So as the chair, this is of course the board's decision. That was the CAC's collective desire to provide the board the authority to make the decision without a recommendation. But on my behalf, in terms of a duration of assessment, I feel like that duration has already taken place, though it is, if it's the board's desire, an additional period could be provided. I imagine there are 2 more months remaining in the year. That sounds like at least a round number in terms of what might be practical for an early evaluation.
Well, I'm happy to hear 2 months as a period of consideration. And we don't have a full motion before us. I'm sorry. Okay. So I'm hopeful that we can continue to review this. Ms. Thomas, I'm sorry, I didn't see that you had your hand up.
That's all right. I first want to thank Mr. Winia because I imagine this is a lot of work. And so I appreciate your effort and you're very organized, which I appreciate. I could, you gave full instructions and all of that. I was very impressed. I would just like to make a motion that we reconsider this at our January meeting. And would expect to have attendance and communications for both November and December from this member of the CAC.
I'll
That would be
second.
my motion.
We have a motion and a second. Mr. McGlasson
I
has a
just,
comment.
and I don't know, if it's the appropriate time or if it impacts the motion. I just would remind the board that the CAC appointments are annual calendar year appointments. So the December meeting would not be the normal time that staff would bring reappointments to the CAC before the board. Based on the current meeting schedule, that could be put off to January because the board meeting will occur before the CAC meeting, provided nobody's
Okay.
schedule changes come the first of the year. But historically, we have tried to bring those reappointments to the board in December to have them done before the first of the year. And then the second point, or information to add, that with the removal of Mr. Greenberg, the CAC, and correct me if I'm wrong, Mr. Winia, but the CAC membership goes from 10 to 9, which does change their quorum number.
Mhm. Okay. So I would, thank you for bringing that up, Mr. McGlasson. And to know that having CAC appointments in January is possible, especially because that would follow the December meeting of the CAC. Also, in January, there may be new members of this board of directors. And that sort of makes sense for them to make appointments for the CAC. Sure, I'll give public comment. Just a second. So we have a motion on the table for 2 months, and that would take us into January, the January meeting of this board, at which time we could also have the appointments of the CAC membership. Okay. Would anybody like to make further comments on the board?
I would just like to make a comment. I've been on this board for several years, and the CAC has always had issues with attendance. And I do understand your frustrations, but for Mr. Schaefer showing up today shows me his willingness to, start attending the meetings. And I have no problem with reevaluating in a couple months, but attendance and getting people involved in the CAC has always been an issue. And I've been on this board probably 18 years. So that's all I'd just like to say.
So, thank you, Mr. Swafford. So if no further comments from the board, I would like to offer this opportunity for public comment. Raise your hands if you are virtual. And Mr. Schaefer, would you like to make a comment?
Well, I just,
Oh,
really think it's important to do.
We need you speaking into a microphone, please.
Yes, thank you. I'm sorry. I think this is important, what we do, and I know a little bit about it. And I'm sorry if I've been dilatory. You do move the meetings here and there. And there's been more than once where I've gone to the previous time and it's moved somewhere else. It's a little confusing, but I'll try to do better if you keep me.
thank you. So we have a motion on the floor, please. Any further comments? We'll have a roll call vote then.
Piedmont Smith,
Yes.
Munson,
Yes.
Jones,
Yes.
Thomas,
Yes.
Swafford,
Yes.
Githens.
Yes.
Motion passes.
Thank you. So now we have more from the CAC. Let's go to the good part now, Mr. Winia.
I did not mean to steal today's meeting, but I will remain for my last point at the podium, which is the CAC activity report. We did have a few interesting exchanges at our last meeting as well. We got an update from Mr. McGlasson on the biodigester feasibility study process that the district decided to partner with the city of Bloomington on. So the consultants did provide a little bit of information about some of the initial preliminary results from their outreach for, I think in particular, we had talked about potential sources for acquiring material for supplementing to the biodigestion process. I did also provide the same update on the rebranding process to the CAC that we just discussed today and received a little bit more feedback that was valuable. And then we did get the report from Mr. McGlasson and Ms. Edwards from the AISWMD annual retreat, which they both found valuable, provided a little bit of information on, actually quite a bit of information on. And I was also a little bit surprised by the breadth of material covered at that meeting. So I think it was good that we had representatives there. And the CAC also gave its, I guess, affirmative feedback to the job descriptions that were also just reviewed and voted on. So a lot was covered last week that was covered here today. Yeah, including our discussion on attendance. So I think we covered most of the things here that were covered with the CAC at our last meeting.
Thank you.
Yes.
Thank you. Do you have any questions for Mr. Winia? Thank you. Then we'll move on to department reports. And Mr. McGlasson, you want to start us off?
Sure. I'll start with a couple of things that are not in the board packet. First, I know that some of you commented that you all have some knitted stocking caps
Yes.
up there for you today. If you'll recall last month's meeting, the board was provided a copy of a letter from a mother of an individual that Frank Ledbetter, who got connected with our materials for the arts facility, and he likes to knit, and he knits hats that he gives out to people in need and the homeless, and scarves as well. And they were made aware of the conversation that was had, and Frank was very excited and pleased that the board commented on him and was encouraging to him, and so he brought down some hats. He wanted everybody to have a hat. So you have a hat from Frank Ledbetter.
That's great.
I'm pretty impressed. They're pretty sturdy hats. I'm pretty
great.
impressed with his knitting ability. Then the second thing, we recently went to the county council to request an additional appropriation for an annual agency fee in our debt service budget that was not budgeted for this year. And that did go through. Unfortunately, I missed that last year's fee was not paid until January of this year. So we are again in a position to go seek another $400 additional appropriation to cover this year's fee. The bill for which just arrived this month. So I apologize for the oversight and the confusion. Embarrassed that that's happened, but it is something that we need to do to keep our budgets in the black in the DLGF gateway and on the books for SBOA. So I have talked with Kim Shell in the council office, and we'll get that agenda request submitted to her to be on the council's December agenda to get that additional appropriation requested and hopefully approved yet this year, so we can pay this year's agency fee on time. And again, I mean, there is the money, unappropriated money in that fund to cover this, and it will not impact the payments that are due on the bond next year.
So I think it's great that you're making this report to us, because you have 6 members of the board hearing this, and come budget time next summer, we will all remember to make sure this gets into the budget.
The fee is included in next year's budget.
Good.
Ms. Piedmont Smith, did you have?
Which fee is this?
It's an agency fee. It's paid to the bank that holds the bond. And it's an annual fee that just we're under the bond agreement we're required to pay. It's for administrative purposes, to cover administrative costs for the bank for managing the bond.
So which fund is it?
The landfill the landfill bond, closure bond. The one you asked how much we owe on earlier.
So the amount that you've already gotten permission from the county council to spend was the 2021 fee, and now we have to ask for the.
Well, I thought it was this year's, but when I missed when I looked at that last year's fee was not paid until January, and so that $400 that should have come out last year did not come out until this year.
Okay, so we're looking at $800.
So yeah, so in essence, we didn't pay the fee on the books. We did not pay the fee in 2021, and we're paying it twice in 2022.
Okay, thank you for the explanation.
And then I guess on some more pleasant notes, the county council did unanimously adopt our budget. All three of the budgets, the operating, the debt, and the capital budgets on October 18th. We also were acknowledged, received an award from MC Iris for our efforts partnering with them this year to help control and eradicate invasive species at our South Walnut facility and also out at the landfill. So those were, it was nice to be recognized for them for partnering with them on that. And then also on the memo on page 72, the packet, Mr. Winnie referenced, I provided the CAC with an update on the digester study. And since providing that update to them and producing the board report, the consultants actually did have an update meeting at the CBU offices on October the 26th, that I was able to attend. Mr. Winnie, as well as Ryan Conway from the CAC, were also in attendance at that meeting. And as you can see in the memo, the consultant provided updates on, their attempts to contact potential generators and users of such a facility should be developed. I think my recollection was initially the study proposed looking at a 50-mile radius. They've since expanded that to a 75-mile radius. And you can see they've attempted to contact about 100, what they've identified as 180 potential feedstock sources. We've gotten about a 30% response rate. So there certainly could be a better response, but of that, about half of those respondents indicated that if the facility were to be put into operation, they would consider using it. They did not have, Mr. Winnie, do you recall? I don't remember. They didn't have any volume estimates based on. I don't think that the consultant was able to provide any volume estimates for material that those potential users would bring into the facility.
To my recollection, I believe they only had 4 actual respondents with numeric values to their inquiry. And I don't know if those values were included, but they didn't have like a comprehensive estimate from all of the averages of those who did respond.
Yeah, so they weren't able to provide, the volumes and for the district's perspective, I mean, that's, our one of our key points of interest is how much material are we diverting from final disposal. So another thing I found interesting that, I think the CBU initially proposed this study looking to site the facility at the Blucher Pool plant. The consultant is now asking them to consider doing this at the Dillman Road facility. I think that's based more on ability to access. There's more direct access to the Dillman Road facility. And with Blucher Pool is not easy to get to now that I-69 has come through. So, and then also did some discussion on the solid waste material that'll come out of the back end of the digestion process. And you have they said what would come out of there would be considered a Class B biosolid, which has some limited land application potential, mostly in agricultural settings. Also potential to move that material on, to a composting facility where it could be further processed and refined to a Class A biosolid, which would have more applicable or more applications than the Class B biosolid. So, and I think that has to do with the potential for pathogens in the Class B and the Class A. The further processing eliminates those potential pathogens. So in a nutshell, that was what they got out of the update. Again, I said Mr. Conway and Mr. Winia were at that meeting, and they're both here, and with I guess with the board's approval, would offer them an opportunity to expand on what I've said if they wish to do that.
I can't see Mr. Conway's hand, so I don't know if he has anything to say. But the two thoughts that I had were, first, I was very surprised by the switch of location for the study, because the study has actually already been conducted on the facility that this study is now being conducted on, which I didn't find to be very reasonable, since that was not what was advertised when the district agreed to support this study. And second, the high case estimate from the preliminary results seemed, from my perspective, like an incredible reach. It included a very high ratio of collecting residential food waste for feeding the biodigester, which, to the extent of my knowledge from the readings that I've done, is, I mean, you've seen how difficult recycling is. Organics would be even more difficult. And also a biodigester is more sensitive than a recycling facility. So I think the high case would actually be very difficult to achieve, but did seem like the most, I guess, visually attractive goal produced from the preliminary results. So I am interested in seeing what the final results yield, and do plan to continue to follow the process and participate in the exchanges that follow once it is released. Thank you.
Yeah, Mr. Conway does have his hand up, but.
Oh, I'd like to ask a question that maybe Mr. Conway can address. What types of businesses, properties, whatever, were contacted as possible food stocks for this, or feedstocks rather? And as I do the numbers, this looks like there's only been a response from like 25, 26
Not many.
individuals, groups, whatever. So it seems kind of low. Anyway, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Conway, for letting me speak first. You need to unmute.
Oh, sorry. Can you all hear me?
Yes.
Oh, excellent. Okay, fantastic. Okay, so yeah, I was at the meeting as well. I have played a secretarial role for 3 nonprofits and 2 boards or commissions in town. So I've learned to type at lightning speed, and I'd be happy to share all 19 pages of notes that I have. Yeah, so to answer the question directly, again, so far as I was able to discern, within the 75-mile radius that they expanded to, they talked to a lot of people in this county and in adjacent counties, and the resounding response is actually, to quote Dave Barron, one of the consultants, a lack of response. They tended to have one of 3 responses that are, quote, "We don't have waste. We do have waste, but it's not worth my time, or it's too expensive to bring to that location." And also that people are busy and cold inquiries won't reveal much. Now, there is a field of dreams sort of desire that if we build it, they may come. That is possible. That's always possible. I'm not sure that public finance should be based on fields of dream type of thinking either, because the metrics that we do have, it says that The biggest interested potential clients are four: Roseacre Farms, Wabash Valley Value Produce, Tyson Foods, and Farbist Foods. All of those are at least 60 miles away. One of them already has its own anaerobic lagoon, and the other one is only interested in bringing it here if it would be a lower cost than how they are already hauling. But as a hauler, what I can say is that hauling prices won't change over time. In fact, with the futures that diesel's trading at right now, we're actually looking at a structural increase in hauling prices unless and until we have somewhat of a massive recession. So looking at the source potential, I think that they said there were a couple of blood renderers from abattoirs that do animal slaughter for food creation, and maybe a couple of wineries. And fats, oils, and grease that already are a problem in the wastewater system, of course, could definitely be utilized. But so far as their actual results suggest, there does not seem to be much interest. And when quote unquote aggressively pursuing local residential organic waste came up, the lead consultant immediately looked at me to ask what our issues with contamination have been. And I can say, much like the rest of our recycling system, that contamination in organics is still a massive problem. And Earthkeepers has maintained for years that education has to come first on this, or we will run into problems. I refer you all to the Kessler report in 2018 that was specific to organic waste recovery. And one specific example they give of Madison, Wisconsin, warns precisely against a biodigester, which went down because of contamination. It became so contaminated over so many years that the person running it increased the cost until they just had to shut it down, and then the town was without an organics program. So putting the cart before the horse in this sort of a situation could be pretty damaging. And I have to echo that. I support Mr. Winia's comment that I remember that the board funded a research project for the bleacher pools, and that a research project 2 or 3 years ago had already been conducted on the Dillman wastewater treatment plant, and that scientific research conducted in good faith revealed that it might not be financially feasible for local government to execute on this. However, Energy Power Partners is what I would call a motivated consultant that has a financial wing specifically built for going around the country looking for these types of projects and building a case based on the repertoire of projects they're able to acquire. So to refer to Energy Power Partners' previous projects with biodigestion, I would also refer to some cases in Vermont that you all might want to Google or look up, where some biodigester project that they were behind didn't work out so well a couple of years after it was initiated. So these are all things, contextual factors that I think that we do need to take into consideration. And as far as the story has gone about, free fertility for conventional monocropping farmers, their analysis showed that they have not found any farmers in this area that are interested in receiving the biodigestate, the Class B biosolid. Now, there are places in Indiana that would love it and would certainly take it, and plenty of people are registered to do it. However, there just doesn't seem to be anyone locally that would do it. And Earthkeepers does not believe that IDEM would be very receptive to adding the additional permitting that we would need for our composting facility to receive Class B biosolids, nor do I believe that our neighbors would appreciate it, even if IDEM did. So I think that there seems empirically to be a problem with where do we put the leftovers, the Class B biosolids, and then also where are we going to get the organic waste to power this? And the consultants seem to be reduced to either a maximalist or a minimalist case. The minimalist case I actually support, which is use the fats, oil, and grease that we have already coming to the facility to power some generators and make sure that the electric and heat generation in the plant could be self-sufficient. That's amazing. The maximalist case that they're pushing is something about how they would finance the operation to extract and compress and refine gas for a pipeline. And I'll let Duke Energy get into the interconnect agreement fee stuff about that. And again, if they're financing that portion, that I guess that isn't an intergovernmental concern. But again, on the motivated consultant perspective, the biogas compressed gas solution seems to be a little bit of a reach. So thinking realistically about solving this problem, I love the idea of fats, oils, and grease. That seems accessible. That seems to be what we do have, and that would be. It's a problem that we know already exists that we could turn into a solution that really would be an enhancement to the infrastructure of our local wastewater treatment plant. But if we, build it on the hope that they will come, and the hope that we'll find farmers to take the waste, and the hope that the contamination won't shut this thing down. We can do that, but we have plenty of empirical reasons right now to be suspect at best. And I thank you very much for your time. And I'll send these notes to anyone who does want them. I just don't want to bombard you with too much, given how much I'm reporting now. But anyway, thank you very much for the opportunity to speak tonight.
Thank you. So, is there other public comment? Are there questions from the board? Ms. Piedmont Smith.
Yeah, if I could ask Mr. Conway, so the minimalist vision would be just to use fats, oils, and grease that is currently regulated by CBU, or where would that fat, oil, and grease stuff come from?
So far as I can tell, it would be fats, oils, and grease that could be potentially directly piped to the facility or tanker trucked over. More likely, probably tanker trucked, given the way that the grease traps are currently set up.
So this would be from individual restaurants?
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that would be minimal. I mean, it would still be good. And my other question, I'm not sure who might be able to answer this, but I agree with Mr. Winia that the study requested was based on the use of the Blucher Pool facility. So how can they just, have they studied Blucher Pool and they ruled it out, or how can they just pivot to Dillman Road? Anybody know?
I think it would be a question for utilities to answer.
Well, in the notes, they immediately launched into, they originally began studying the Blucher pools, but quickly noted that Dillman would be a better target for the study because of its size. Number one, greater solids volume and greater side stream capacity in terms of nutrient loads. Dillman captures 80% of the total wastewater flow. They have dewatering capacities that makes this more accessible. Number two, accessibility for trucking is better at Dillman. Better high strength organic waste transportation access and lower hauling costs. Number three, condition of existing dewatering facilities and sludge storage building. Dillman has better infrastructure that could be reused because of a good ventilation system. Number four, loading is the most consequential, proving to be cost effective for CBU. More municipal sludge to work with at Dillman potentially blend with HSW, high strength waste. Also, it's a larger plant capacity to better mitigate and treat solids handling recycling streams. Blucher Pools has primary clarifiers and can get energy out of the wastewater and then take it to a biodigester at Dillman right away, and also land area at Blucher for side streaming compost. So I think that's more of a comparison. So those four reasons: greater solids volume, accessibility for trucking, conditions of existing dewatering facilities and sludge storage building, and higher load are the four reasons that they stated for switching the analysis from Blucher to Dillman.
But didn't CBU already rule out Dillman for other reasons?
They
Indeed.
did initially.
Yeah, they did. And I think that, as you know, Mr. Conaway, who takes notes at the speed of lightning, obviously, and him rattling all of that stuff off. And I think that, those are that is the rationale that the consultant presented for CBU to consider, doing this at Dillman Road. And I think, and then I'd have to go back and look at the study proposal, but obviously the study was brought up, looking at Blucher Pool. Now, I don't know that there's anything that would, prohibit the consultant from coming back and saying, well, we think your other facility would be a better location. But I would want to go back and look at the documents. And if all we're doing is looking at a feasibility, they may say it's more feasible at Dillman than it is at Blucher. And we're not doing any, if we're not going beyond that and looking at paying to design anything. I think that's probably within the scope of the study. But again, I would want to go back and look at the proposal and the agreement that was signed.
I do feel like this is a little bit of bait and switch, though, because what we approved was for the Blucher Pool, and we were not consulted as to whether or not it would change.
It was a feasibility study, and if that study comes back and says that it's more feasible at Dillman than at Blucher, I think that's within the scope of that study. But again, I would want to go back and look at the proposal and the agreement that was signed.
I think some of those specifics are really up to CBU rather than to the district.
Right, but I think, but to Commissioner Gibson's point, what we agreed to was to look at a feasibility study of doing a digester at Blucher Pool.
Right.
And, and if all we're doing is looking at the feasibility of doing it here, and if they want to say here versus there, but if we're going beyond that and looking at doing any design work, that's not what we signed up for.
No.
We just signed up to say, is it economically feasible to do this? Yes or no?
So anything further, Ms. Peabody Smith?
Yes, so what is the timeline to get the final report?
The final.
What is the timeline to get the final report?
Off the top of my head, I think we're 3 or 4 months out. Mr. Conway, do you have that handy?
They had said end of January, between end of January and end of February 2023 will be scheduled for presentation of the final report. So I imagine that they'll have something in December.
Thank you.
So anything further, board members? Okay. So Mr. McGlasson, do you have other items
I
you wish to
conceded the
report?
balance of my time to Mr. Winnie and Mr. Conway.
That sounds so lawyerly. Okay. Well, in your package, you have information about the media reports and the education and outreach.
Yeah. The same media summary and education outreach summary that are there every month. And obviously happy to answer any questions on any of the information in the memo.
Okay. So let's move then to a report from Mr. Joey Long, who's been patiently waiting to talk to us. He's there.
Yep. Hi, everybody.
Hi.
So as Tom mentioned earlier, I'll start with the recycling. Staff has been working with MC Iris, and Elisa Procrowd came in and removed all the invasive species, cut them down. And staff has been going in and cleaning up the park, dragging everything off, boxing it up, and we sent it down to Good Earth Composting. So we've got all that done now, so there's no more brush or tree limbs or anything laying around, so all that's cleaned up. The household hazardous materials, we're still working on shipments. Our vendor is changing the way they're doing stuff. They've had some setbacks with their facilities and staff. So we're learning how to prepare and ship out new stuff and what we can and are able to ship at this moment. We are currently talking to them right now on doing a large shipment. Hopefully we can get that out before the end of the year. That way, we're not carrying that stuff over to the new year. And the recycling center, Our Ellisville location, we have concrete steps outside their office building, and they have weathered and cracked over time and broke. So we've done some minor repairs to them. The floor in the building has some wear and tear on it that's starting to need fixed. So we have met with a contractor that has given us a quote, and we're hoping to get him started on that soon to fix the inside of the building and build like a little step and deck on the outside of the Ellisville Recycling Facility office. And that's about all I have this month for you guys. So if you have any questions, I'll be glad to answer them.
So I will ask about your tonnage in pools. Have you noticed any changes in your averages?
Not really. They go up and down between each site, but they're real close the same each month. You know, if you look back, you know, one site may be heavier, but one site may be a little bit lower. So I don't know, you know, I know we have a lot of customers because I go out to the sites I try to go at least twice a week to talk to all the guys and see how everything's going. So I attend each site and I see some of the same people recycling at different sites. And, you know, I guess I never thought about it. I always figured, you know, one person would use the Bethel Lane or use the Ellisville, but I see people recycling at the Ellisville site. If they're on that side of the town, I see people recycling on the south side at Monroe. So I guess I never expected that. So over, you know, this year I have learned that, you know, I'm going to see this people recycling at different locations. So, you know, depending on where people's at on that side of town, one site may be getting more than the other.
That's interesting. I would think it would always be people going back to the same site every time. So
Me too. I that's why I totally expected, but I try to go out there on Monday, Wednesdays, and Fridays to see the guys, see if they need anything and what's going on. And I see people that I recognize at other sites all the time.
So board members, do you have any questions for Mr. Long? Thank you, Mr. Long, for your report.
Guys.
Next, let's hear from Mr. Paulson.
Hey, Lee Paulson, landfill environmental compliance director. The report kind of speaks for itself. Only thing we really kind of been working on is we started, and actually as of today, we finished our November groundwater sampling. Conditions were great. Equipment all worked out really well. Mary Beth and I were able to knock it out in pretty efficient time there. So the only other thing I would bring up would be when we get to the compliance stuff is that I know there was a question about tires being brought to the recycle center. One thing I can notice is that from when we started that program, I've seen our tire numbers like fall off a cliff. You know, we're maybe find a tire or something like that. Not that we don't think that there aren't still some out there somewhere, but for in regards to numbers that we see and numbers that we're collecting ourselves, we're seeing a very small amount compared to what we were averaging month by month. So in that sense, I think that it's a positive, and it's still something that people are building up to. And when Mary Beth and I go to people's houses, that's definitely something that we bring up when we notice tires are something there, along with the other solid waste things that we can highlight. We are trying to help people understand that there is a program available and it's affordable and that kind of stuff like that. So at least from our numbers, I am seeing a huge reduction in what we're pulling off the side of the roads. It's not correlating to us having less cases or anything like that, because we're almost at the end of October, the most cases we've ever had for a year, and we still got a couple months to go. And I know this first couple of weeks of November, Mary Beth has been out, and I've been out for other things already. So those numbers are still not going down, but shifting in where what those numbers are. So we're seeing a big uptick in our adopter road as well. Weather's been nice. People are getting more actively involved with it. So we're seeing more activity with that. So trying to take advantage of the positives that we have and trying to run with it. So that's kind of it. So anybody has any questions, I'll be happy to answer.
So questions for Mr. Paulson? Ms. Piedmont Smith?
Yeah, it's actually a comment, not a question. But it's good news about the tires. And I wanted to just make a request for your leachate reports. You still have a line in each table that says hauling costs Dillman, but we don't haul anything to Dillman anymore. I'm wondering, can that line just be taken out, or is there a reason we keep that line in there?
We keep that line in there just because Dillman Road is our backup. You know what I'm saying? So that's kind of our, we still carry our permit with Dillman and with CBU just in case if something were to affect Ellettsville. It doesn't cost us anything other than one sampling. You know, we run a test once a year. It's a very minimal cost to keep that as just a backup. And we just felt that that was the best thing to do, because if something were to happen with the Ellettsville treatment site, which who knows, you know what I'm saying, then we would be, we'd be in a pretty bad spot. So we just figure at this point, even though it's nothing, what if something operates their system, you know, whatever, at least we have that backup option as a, oh, what the heck, you know what I'm saying? And we figure it's better to keep it and not need it than make it disappear. And then all of a sudden, oh, crud, now we're kind of screwed. So that's kind of our thought with that.
Okay, I understand. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Ms. Giffens?
This actually is probably more for Mr. McGlasson and for Mr. Paulson, but how soon will we be posting the position for especially for the compliance, household waste and landfill support staff, so that we can get Mr. Paulson and Mary Beth some help with these compliance cases?
Well, yeah, I mean, Mr. Paulson, Mr. Long and I have been having those discussions, and, you know, as with, just district precedent, the position will be posted internally for existing staff to express an interest in first. And, but, now that we have the position on the books, we have the salary approved, the wages approved to pay the position. We will probably look to get a posting up, next week or in the very near future. And, obviously the position won't be eligible to start till after the first of the year, but we can go ahead and make plans to get it filled.
I would comment that I think it's good for the waste specialist position, because somebody might be finishing up some of their academic work at the end of December, and they might be ready to hit the job market.
Yeah, and that's something that we discussed with the executive committee, that we don't necessarily need to wait till after the first of the year to advertise, to go recruit for these positions. We just know that they can't start till after the first of the year, but that doesn't mean we can't advertise and start identifying candidates.
Okay. So this brings us to the last two items on our agenda. One is public comment. Do we have any public comment? And then comments from the directors. Would anybody like to make a comment? Ms. Piedmont Smith.
Well, just seeing that tomorrow is Veterans Day, I wanted to thank the veterans out there, and we may well be employing some veterans at the district. So thank you for your service.
Thank you. That's a nice thought. Anybody else?
I wanted to thank the district rebranding committee for the work that they've been doing. And I like Ms. Piedmont Smith, I like the our world, our responsibility kind of slogan that goes with it. Yeah.
So I will add that I am inspired to dig through the bottom of my yard basket to get out all those many balls of leftover yarn, and I will take them to the reuse center where they can be turned into hats that'll be very welcome by many people. So thank you to our excellent knitter. Seeing nothing else, we will adjourn this meeting and we'll see you in December.